This is the Passive 25K podcast, a podcast built around the vision of creating wealth through passive income for ourselves and others. The idea of creating income while you sleep seems like a dream come true, but for most professionals, turning this into a reality is a different story. On this show, you will hear real people breaking passive income streams down to the basics, giving you the next steps to start your own passive income journey. If you're new to the show, my name is Kyle Reedstrom from Fargo, North Dakota, where I get to work with my team of agents and investors each day to complete our goal of $25,000 a month in passive income. Now, let's get right into our next conversation. Welcome to the Passive 25K podcast with Kyle Reedstrom. It is episode 6. We are talking about flipping a house in Fargo, North Dakota with our guest, Erik Hatch. Erik, super glad to have you on.
Kyle, this is fun for me. I've watched you grow up from a guy that was wet behind the ears and never knowing that real estate, like you talked about it. You didn't really have many plans about it. And now you're like a tycoon, buddy. I'm super proud of you.
Oh, wow. There it is. I got credibility here. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm very excited for this episode. Erik, I'm going to give the audience your bio.
Okay.
But you didn't give me a bio. You just said Kyle knows me well enough to for the audience.
Well, we'll see how you do.
Yeah, for the audience, Erik and I go way back, but Erik's expertise in real estate agency, he's been an owner of a brokerage for a long time, but his expertise in real estate investing is something that we're looking forward to highlight here. But to start the bio part, Erik Hatch, I stole your bio from your Facebook page, so you might know what's coming.
Okay.
Part-time male model, full-time beefcake. But then I'll give you your actual credentials. Owner of Hatch Realty, brokered by Real, which Hatch is one of the largest brokers, does the most some of the most transaction volume in Fargo, North Dakota. Just switched to Real, which was a big move for Hatch. You're an investor as well. You have many rental properties. You have short-term rentals, and then you have a whole portfolio of rehab and flip properties. And then your main gig that I always, I think of you as, and a lot of people know you for now, is Hatch Coaching, which is just Erik and his team are coaching and mentoring agents and team leaders for real estate agent brokerages around the nation. And they're just about to drop a book. So, a lot of great stuff going on for you with Hatch Coaching. And I will say, man, you have been a mentor to me my entire real estate career. You're the reason I got into real estate, for those who don't know that, for the audience. And you're someone that I've enjoyed being in the wake of and following your coattails and everything you've done, man. And I am eternally grateful for that. So there's my bounce back to you, my friend.
Oh, well, thanks for those kind words. You did well too, by the way, except for the end part. You haven't been in my wake, man. I've been in the process of building you a runway, and like, you were made to fly. I just helped to build the path for you, and so you should be really proud of what you've done. Seriously. You are my brother. You're somebody I love being in business with. We get to be partners together. We're at Real together. We do a lot of life together, and I'm just so proud of the man that you are, and the husband and the father, and like, just what a cool guy. Like, no joke. It is unbelievable to see what you've done with your life. And are you 32 now, Kyle?
32. Yep.
Okay. So I'm 10 years older than you. I'm 42. When I was 32 years old, I was in my second year of real estate. Okay. My second year of real estate. I had just started a team for the first time in my life. You started your team realistically in the last 12 months. And so look at 10 years, how much can happen in 10 years. I bought my first investment property in 2012. I now have 60 doors and I'm doing commercial and short-term rental and long-term rental. And I've flipped 70 plus houses at this point. Like, I've done all this in the last 10 years. And look at where you are right now, Kyle. Like, where you're going to be in 10 years is unbelievable.
Man, dude, thank you so much. And that's such encouragement. And now I'm blushing on camera. So you got that. But Erik, all of that's being said, you just touched on it. You have a lot of different places you put your focus and your time and energy. But then you came across this house flipping in what you call snap offers. That's kind of the business model, the brand around your flipping business. Just to give us insight, how did you find your way into this space? How did you get into that?
Like any good entrepreneur, I ripped it off from somebody else. That was the first move. Our buddy Nick Shivers out of Portland, Oregon. And if you don't know anything about what's happening in Oregon, it's always a fast moving community. And their average sales price now is $500,000 or $600,000. But back when this was starting, average sales price was $350,000 or $400,000. And my buddy Nick is like, Hatch. You wouldn't believe it. Like, we're going on these listing appointments and people don't want to list and actually put it on the market. And immediately I'm like, why would somebody not want to put their house on the market? It didn't make any sense to me. And he's like, yeah, they want to avoid all the hassle. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. People don't want to deal with hassle. And he's like, and some of these places are dumps and they don't have the financial wherewithal, or they don't have the savvy to fix it up. And so they'd rather sell directly to an investor. And he's like, I just decided to be that investor. He's like, I'm a marketing company. Kyle, you running a brokerage, me running a brokerage, we're marketing companies. And so he just said, couldn't we service them instead of having them sell to ABC guy down the street? Couldn't we service them and protect that profit? And immediately I'm like, yeah, but that's like underhanded. Like, you're tricking somebody, There's a lot of wholesalers out there. Kyle, you and I own a wholesale business together. Wholesalers get a bad rap because sometimes they're naming things for the people and they're not telling them the whole picture. And we as realtors follow a code of ethics and things that, and then of course the values that we have in our life would not lead us to deceive anybody. But I was left with this immediate look of like, man, am I deceiving somebody, or am I simply providing them a menu of services? And when I said, man, if I can be fully transparent and even more transparent, like, hey, let's make sure that we disclose that we're going to make a profit on this and that we're doing it for profit and we're going to turn around and sell it, or we're going to hang on to it. And here's what we think it's worth in this value. And here's what it could sell for when it's fixed up. Like, what if we disclose all of that? Well, it turns out that Zillow did a study years ago. This was right before Zillow was launching their Zillow Offers program, which has since gone belly up. But there's companies like Open Door that's out there right now, and they are buying homes for like very, very paper thin margins, but they're buying them at scale. And of course, when the industry's appreciating, it makes great sense. But Zillow Offers, when they were like one of the first ones to the table, they tried to sell it to those of us that invest in Zillow. I'm one of them. They tried to sell it to us by saying, listen, we did a study of the American people of the biggest stressors that sellers have. And we think as investors, and we think as people who are realtors, that the biggest stressor that a seller has is money. Like, how much money am I going to get in my pocket? But that's number 3 on the list. The first is uncertainty. That sellers are stressed out about uncertainty, that they don't know what that next move is going to be, when the time is going to come, how much are they going to get beat up? Is it going to fall out last minute? And this idea of our snap offer, which we stole from Nick Shivers, he calls it My Rocket Listing. We call it snap offer. It's all bundled together as an iBuyer opportunity. And really it's turned into a flipping business for me. But the uncertainty that people fear and that they face is real. The second piece are interruptions. So uncertainty and interruptions are the 2 biggest stressors that sellers face. How long is the home going to be on the market? How many fix-ups do you have to do? Is the $10,000 I'm going to put into our house, is that actually going to provide a return on investment? And so we, as a marketing company, had to figure out, how do we name these issues with people? And then we simply provide for them a menu of options. Option number 1 is list your home a traditional way, which is riddled with uncertainties and riddled with interruptions, but you maximize your dollars in your pocket traditionally. So that's menu option number 1 that most people will choose. But menu option number 2 was, do you want to sell direct to an investor? And I just happen to be that investor, but we'll tell you exactly how much you're going to get. There's no fees associated. We're going to pay the closing costs of all sides. If we're going to offer you $100,000 for your house, you will get $100,000 minus you paying your escrows, right? And so we provided that, and not everybody takes us up on it, but it sure makes the phone ring. And now I've won big on some of these. I have failed huge on some of these. And each one I feel like I roll the dice with. And there's no real equation, but I've simplified it down, Kyle.
Man, there is so much meat in what you just said, but an overarching theme there is this new age of convenience that you talk about. And it just blows my mind when you tell me in our market that people, when you think about real estate, it's how can I get the most money for my house? Everybody's, how much is my house worth today? I want to maximize the amount of house I can get for the payment and the interest rate. The interest rate affects that. And now we're talking about different seasons of life for different people where convenience, which it used to be like, I've had a career and I'm retired and I just want things to be a little more pain-free. But now we're seeing the younger generations even want convenience and speed and they want certainty and they don't want to be interrupted and they want to move fast. This age of convenience blows my mind that money is number 3. And we need to, I think everybody in the audience, everybody, me included, need to really start thinking that way. How can we be problem solvers for people that want things done? And then how do we do it the right way? I loved that you mentioned full disclosure. You're giving the consumer options, Erik. That's what's happening. You're just saying, you can definitely list. We can definitely get your home listed. We can get your home bought today. We can do something in the middle, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Kyle, I took a trip with my wife, Emily, about a week and a half ago. I did a mini mastermind meetup with some buddies of mine and their wives, and we all went to Napa together. Poor me, right? I had a weekend in Napa. My wife has pretty high anxiety when it comes to flying, and it's stressful for her. For me, I can sit back prayerfully in an exit row, but I can sit back and the flight doesn't worry me. I don't worry about any safety issues. I don't worry about the person next to me coughing on me. I don't have any anxiety around those things, but my wife does. She's just wired differently. And so what I did is I chose to fly first class. Now, first class or the seat in the back of the plane, you end up at the same destination, don't you? Mm-hmm. The one in the back of the plane is a $300 ticket, but the first class ticket is $600. And for me, I was like, that's an investment that I'm willing to make because this is taking care of my wife and this is eliminating uncertainty and interruptions in her life. I'm willing to pay more out of my pocket because I know for her, the stage of life that she's in, that I need to make sure that I'm protecting her. I just got an email yesterday from a buddy who's like, hey, I have a coworker and his brother just passed away and he inherited this house. He's overwhelmed with stress and responsibility right now. The house is not in good shape. Do you have any options? And most of the time, that person who just lost their brother is dealing with so much emotion and exhaustion. They're not thinking, how much money can I make in this? They're thinking, life is taxing for me right now. And I want to be able to push the easy button. And I had $0 to begin with. If I'm inheriting this house and I have this fiduciary responsibility for it, do I let go of some of the margin for the ease of selling direct to an investor? And for him, that's what he chose. And for my wife, we chose first class because we're bougie sometimes, but also because I'm eliminating that chaos in her life and that anxiety. And so for you, a healthy 32-year-old, you're going to pick, I'm going to go for the money every day because I'll deal with the stress. There are seasons of life when you make choices that are different than financially fueled choices. They are emotionally fueled. I tell you what, emotion is a powerful motivator. I think it's more of a powerful motivator than money is. And so if you know how to listen to that and speak to that, it is riddled with opportunity to serve this community that we so love.
I love that, man. And I think for people that are thinking about this space of real estate investing, flipping houses or being a problem solver, you need to open your ears. You need to be tuned in to what problem is facing the general community or the consumer you're talking to or your network of people. And that's where you can really start to solve things. And if it is the easy button for some people, that's where entrepreneurs, business owners, investors can step in and be a problem solver and do it the right way. I think it's so important. I love that you said you're disclosing that you're going to make profit. Actually remember Nick Shivers saying, he would say, do you feel it's fair for me to make a profit, or what do you feel is a fair profit for me to make on this? He would even put it in the consumer's arms sometimes. And it's such I think, Erik, do you feel like flipping houses, even the word, it gets a little bit it's kind of a sleazy, salesy, it gets kind of a bad name a little bit, this side of real estate investing?
So there's this feel of gentrification that comes with it sometimes. There's this feel of doing things, flippers, a lot of them have cut corners and have done things to aesthetically slap it together, but structurally they haven't tended to any of those pieces. And certainly I've seen a lot of those moves done in this industry, but ultimately flippers do get a bad name because they're capitalists, right? I'm a unique combination of empathetically fueled and massively capitalistic. And so I want to serve these people, but I can't risk hundreds of thousands of dollars and ample amounts of time and resources without profit being tied to it. And so we've just been intentionally articulate with our description when we're front facing with clients. And now we're naming for them. All right, listen, and here's the skinny of the numbers. If your home is worth in its current condition about $200,000, I'll usually give you an offer of 70 cents on the dollar. There's no commissions tied to that. There's no there's no other expenses that are tied to it. You're going to walk with 70 cents on the dollar. So you're going to make $140,000 on that. And Kyle, I'm looking at your face as somebody who is financially fueled. It's like 60 grand you're leaving behind. You're crazy to do that. But here's the piece, okay? Number one, you don't have to fix up a single thing that's wrong with the house. I will buy all those problems. Number two, you can close whenever you want. You want to close next week? We'll close next week. You want to close in 6 months? We'll close in 6 months. You can name your date. That's worth something, isn't it? Number three, you get a chance to leave all your stuff behind. If you don't want to take, like we've dealt with some hoarders. Holy cow, that Hoarders TV show, that's real life for some people. We've taken on some problems and some big ones at that. So now we're doing that, but let's talk about the fees. Traditional real estate fees. Let's say you get relocated. You live in Fargo, North Dakota right now. You get relocated to Kansas City, Missouri, and you have to move today. In the average market, at least what we're dealing with right now, a home sits on the market for about 30 days, and then it sits in escrow for, let's say 60 days. Okay. So 90 days, 3 months. Well, if that place sits vacant for 3 months, you're paying your utilities, you're paying for somebody to remove the snow, or you're paying for your lawn care, you're paying for your mortgage. So let's say that's going to cost you $2,000 a month. Okay. So now you're $6,000 out. Well, then you're also going to pay 7% in commissions traditionally. That's $14,000 on that sales price of $200,000. So 14,000 plus 6,000. So now you're actually walking away with 180 grand. But what happens if that buyer, I have a house that I flipped. This is the house that haunts me to this day. I have a house that I flipped, and now I'm contract for deeding it out because I still wasn't able to sell it. It was on the market for like 4 months. I dealt with all of winter through this house. I got a purchase agreement on it. And the day before it closed, the buyer's financing fell through. I went from staging it to unstaging it to staging it again. Like, how much money and how much time does that take? This happened to me 3 times of the buyer backing out and falling through over the course of a year. And so I'm not going to say that to you as the seller as a scare tactic. I'm going to bring that up as an example of there will be things that will go wrong and we have to be prepared for it. So we already know that your 200, Kyle, is not actually 200, it's 180. But then how much uncertainty is there? How much interruption? How much chaos? How much doubt? Or do you just want to rip the Band-Aid off and sell it to me for 140? I just want what's best for you. And for some people, it's about the people that actually entertain the offer. About 20% will say yes. 80% will say no. They're going to say, I'm going to roll the dice. I'd rather work hard for 180 than just give up on 140. But there's a market out there for people where they're happy to take the easy option because of life stressing them out. And that hurts more than the financial hit.
Absolutely, man. This is starting to make a lot of sense. You're creating a lot of clarity, especially for our audience on why there's a space for this. And I love getting the perspective of the consumer because I think it helps us be better, like we said, listeners. It helps us be more tactical. I just had an interaction with a builder that was an open book builder. They literally just showed you all their numbers. And they said they've never lost business because of it. Because people just want to know, they're actually okay with a lot of the numbers. They just want to know how it's all going to work. And their motivation is that it's their motivation. I want to talk about it from the other side as an investor, but I want to hold off on that for a second. And just how many, you said you've done about 70 of these flips now, Erik. You've been doing this for how many years have you had the Snap Offer program going?
4 years, I think, about 4 years now.
Okay. And you've been able to, interact with a number of sellers. Like you said, that 20% is saying yes. And that's led to about 70 or so properties that you've purchased. And then are you generally fixing these up, or are you just putting them back on market, or how does that kind of go when you're solving that problem for the consumer first?
Yep. I want to answer that. And then I do want to go back to that 70% number, because I think it's important to unpack that, because you triggered something in me.
Okay.
We have a few options when I buy a house. The first is to wholesale it, which means in its purest form, I never actually own the house. I'm just the vehicle in which it gets delivered from the seller to the buyer. But it never hits the market. I never actually own it. And if I do, it's for like a 20-minute period. But I'm just introducing it, and I'm taking a margin there on the in-between. So let's say I had an investor ready to go for that property. Almost every time, Kyle, I'm going to keep the nickel instead of chasing the dime. I'm going to go and I'm going to say, yeah, that's a good margin for me for being the marketing company that founded, the person that serviced this all the way through. I'm comfortable with this margin and introducing it to somebody else. So that's the first option, is a wholesale. The second is a wholetail. A wholetail option is when I actually purchase the house, but I don't fix it at all. I don't put anything into it. I just put it right back on market. The house is in fair to good condition. I don't have to spend all this time putting in a new HVAC system and changing the shingles and painting the walls and updating the flooring. None of that exists. So that is the wholesale option. And for me,
you're not going to get that up to complete 100% market value. You're maybe going to just leave it as is, leave meat on the bone for someone else to maybe do that. You're just going to go.
I'm assuming the holding costs, and I know that my margin isn't going to be spectacular in that, but it is going to be healthy, right? And if we're clear on numbers, my goal is to make a minimum of 10% on the house of what I net. Now, why I want to go back to the numbers here in a moment is because if I'm offering 70 cents on the dollar, but I'm trying to profit 10 or 15%, where does that other margin go? And I want to cover that for your listening audience. But then there's two different kinds of flips that I do. There's the lipstick on a pig, and that means usually paint and floor coverings, sometimes countertops. That's about it. And then you're aesthetically going to clean up the outside and make sure that it's bright, and you're going to clean the house, do a deep clean of it, but you're putting lipstick on a pig. You're not actually changing anything of the house. That happens for about half of the flips, where they need some TLC, some extra elbow grease. And in fact, we now offer a $10,000 interest-free loan to any of our sellers, so they can do that work themselves, so long as that they just come and list the house with us and they pay me back at closing. And so when people do that, what we find out is that 10 grand that I loaned them turns into 30 grand of actual money in their pocket. Like by just doing that lipstick on a pig, that aesthetic touch, that changes some financial pieces for them. But the one that tends to be the biggest risk and the biggest reward, my biggest wins and my biggest losses, are houses that need ample work. I'm talking anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 of cash into the house. And from workforce issues to and labor shortages to supply chain issues to squatters. We haven't had squatters here, but it happens on a national level. To dealing with all these things, I've had my biggest wins with my big risks, and I've had my biggest losses. My biggest win is about 50 grand. My biggest loss is about 60 grand. So yeah, you run it either way, how it goes. But I do want to go back, Kyle, if it's appropriate to talk about that margin. Because if I'm giving that person a 70 cents on the dollar offer, here's what I'm disclosing to them. Because you had mentioned there's a builder that opens up their book and says, here's all of our margin and here's everything that costs. We do the same with our sellers in this. We tell them, listen, when I buy this, when the investor buys it, immediately I'm paying 3% to the representation for that purchase, right? So Sarah, who runs all of my flips, Sarah gets 3%. The brokerage gets some, she gets some, but that's 3%. So on this $140,000 purchase, that's now $4,200 going in commissions. Now we have holding costs, and holding costs include the loan. It includes the utility bills. It includes taxes and special assessments. It includes lawn care and snow removal. Here in the Midwest, these winter months are very expensive to have a house sit vacant. And especially when you have to then do snow removal every time. Hell, it's April right now and it just snowed again. Like you're still doing snow removal in April. And so that compounds. Then we always leave margin for the craps, because what happens is when you get into a house, I promise you the water heater is going to stop working. The furnace is going to trip. You're going to have some leaky pipes. You're going to have some issues that you didn't plan on fixing. But then you have to have the labor that goes into it. And so we tend to tell them, all right, there's going to be, in any way, shape, or form, I'm expecting there to be 3 to 6% in the craps. So first, remember, we're at 70%. We're going to put 3% for commissions. So that brings us to 73. Then we're going to have holding costs and craps that I'm going to put at 3 to 6%. So that brings us to, holding costs are 10%. Sorry, I did my math wrong there. Holding costs are 10% because I don't know if I'm going to hold it for 1 month or 8 months. Depends on the work that's there. And so I have to cover my butt. So I'm doing holding costs at 10%. Then I'm factoring in the craps of 3 to 6%. And then I got to pay commission.
Then you got to sell
when I go and sell it. And I got to pay 6% commission, right? I got to pay on the buy and the sell.
Yep.
And so add all that together. And I think that that puts me in a pretty small profit margin. Now, where I make my money is if I can get it sold quick. And if I can build into the cost, the repairs that need to go there, because if I can minimize my days of holding it and I can minimize my craps, that's where I'll make my money.
That makes and when you say 70 out of 100, your mind goes to whoa. But when you break it down, 3 here, 3 here, 3 to 6, there's 10% holding. You got to pay to sell it, man. I can see where there can be nothing left for you in the end of some of these, and they turn into losses. But okay, Erik, this is amazing information. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I want to dive into some examples. I want to talk risk and reward. You've touched on a little bit about it, but people that are getting into this space, I really want them to be aware of what to look for, and I want to hear from your firsthand experience what maybe some wins and losses might have been. So we'll take a break, and we'll be right back. Hey, wanted to take a quick break from this week's episode. Wondering if you ever ask yourself, how do I get started in this stuff? Or if I'm already doing it, what are some next steps or people that are doing the same thing that I want to do, people on this passive income journey? Well, we were getting that question and we created a community of passive income investors called Passive Income University. This is a place where you can watch videos, things that we've done, where we put tools and information, where we've built a community of people that can communicate, ask questions, and grow together to start their passive income journey. And eventually we complete our passive income journey together. If you're interested in more info on Passive Income University, check us out at p25kg.com. All right, we are back talking about flipping a house in Fargo, North Dakota with the one and only Erik Hatch. And Erik, you dove deep into some of the numbers on your end of this thing. How these flips actually work. And we have people that are listening right now that are, maybe they're going through a flip. They're thinking about getting into this renovation. Maybe they know someone that's doing a flip or a renovation, and they say, that's a good way for me to create some capital. It's a good way for me to get involved. Maybe they have an opportunity they're considering, but I want them to know the good and the bad to this thing. And I don't want this to be talk people out of it. I just want self-awareness around this topic because flipping is such a sexy thing. It's highly popularized on television and all these different things. But we got to know our numbers in this stuff. We got to know what we're doing. And you're a guy that has done this to the tune 50 plus, 70 plus flips. Talk to us about, if you'd be willing to open up about maybe an example of how you navigated one of these that was maybe a good win, and then maybe flip it around. Talk to us about some of your biggest losses that you've touched on that, maybe we don't want to, we're going to open up that wound for you a little bit on some of these.
Well, if you remember in our first segment, I told you that my wife has some higher anxiety, and nothing like going home and being like, honey, I just lost $55,000 on this house and it still isn't sold. Right. Like that's the conversation that keeps me up at night. So let's start with where it all started. It was when we first launched this, there was a house in a traditional newer neighborhood. Kyle, you know it as Eagle Run, but it's a neighborhood where homes are built in the 2000s and 2010s. So not new houses by any means. And this person chose to sell direct to me. I paid them 80 cents on the dollar because I thought, well, there's still going to be all this margin to go around and everything's going to get done quickly. And the cost of labor really surprised me. That was one of the big eye-opening pieces. I bought this house for $254,000. Now that's like when we take out mortgages and you're buying a 30-year mortgage, you don't really think like, oh, I guess I'm going to owe this money if something goes wrong. But this was $254,000 cash, essentially. I used a bank loan, but this is like a short-term bank loan that if I don't pay, I've now signed a lien on my own personal property. And so this wasn't like I'm just rolling the dice with it. Now I'm freaking out because if I mess up on this, they're going to come from my house. And that became a big reality. I expected the work to get done in about a week and a half, and it took 5 weeks. And so the time delay was really rough. Then you get into a project. Let's say I'm going to change the flooring in the kitchen because that looks pretty bad. But when you change the flooring in the kitchen, now you have new next to old. And so you're looking at the countertops being like, oh, shoot, that really sticks out now that I changed the flooring. And the carpet looks like it's pretty worn also. And so actually changing this flooring by trying to just improve the look of the kitchen now has become this gaping hole of like continual projects over and over and over. And so that's what happened with this is I kept saying, well, I guess we should. And the timing of the market in Fargo, North Dakota matters a lot because if you put a house on the market in April versus November, it's a very different audience, right? We are so seasonal here. And so timing matters a lot. All said and done, I invested $250,000+ of my money in the beginning, plus money to fix it up. And when it was sold, I profited $5,400. Now, if I told you, hey, I got a great way for you to make $5,400 and you don't actually have to swing a hammer and all you have to do is stress out for a couple months, are you interested? People are going to say, well, yeah, I think so. But man, what did I risk losing? Right? So let's talk about the biggest loss that I had. This is a house in North Moorhead. Moorhead is in Minnesota. We are sister cities with Fargo, North Dakota and Moorhead, Minnesota. And this is a house that's somewhat rural. 3 acres of land sitting up in this neighborhood called Oakport. And this house, we walked into it and the lady that was there wouldn't leave her living room. The sun was showing us around. I swear they had this pole barn outside, which I'm pretty sure half the people in there were dealing with some sort of chemical addiction because it was just like creepy and dungeness. And so we're seeing this house, holes punched in walls, and the smells are putrid. But I look at this and I don't know about you, Kyle, but when I walk into a property, I tend to just be like, oh, this could be a really cool place fixed up. And I'm ignoring like, oh, I guess they're making meth out in the pole barn, you know? And so I'm seeing all this and I give my offer not covering any margin. I give my offer based on where I think the house is at. I offer $150,000 for this place because I had this empathetic heart for what they were going through. This woman was dealing with kids taking advantage of her, and her house was super dilapidated. And I'm like, I want to help her out. And remember, I have an empathetic heart, but I'm also a capitalist. And so this was a very conflicting place for me to go. But I'm like, this is the most I can pay you is 150. I should have paid 50 for the place, but I paid her 150. This house, again, on 3 acres, a 3,500 square foot house, it is substantial. So I budget, and I'm like, I bet it's going to cost me about 50 grand on this flip. Ends up costing me $120,000+. When we pull back some paneling down in the basement, we basically have water gushing in and foundational problems. There's an ice dam that happens on the roof. And so now I have an active roof leak all over the new carpet that I have inside the house. Lightning hits the tree outside the house that I have to pay $2,000 just for tree removal. The house, in the time in which I own it, has to get a new furnace, new water heater. Everything is run down, and 3 times the buyers back out, either from cold feet or by financing issues. And I have to stage and unstage this house. And for the course of a year, I hold on to it. I lost over $50,000 on this house. I still own it today, and am in a contract for deed with someone, just trying to get it off my books. But what I did is I tied up, and I'm like, oh, I bet I can lean on all this money. And so I paid cash for it. I got $300,000 in cash tied up in this house. And the deal I have is that the sales price is the sales price. It's been contract for deed for 2 years, Kyle. I've lost in inflation? I've lost 15% on this house. If I actually sell it to him, if I buy it back, or if he doesn't fulfill the contract for deed, then the good news is, like, I'm going to have an appreciating asset. But right now I messed up everywhere on this, everywhere. The numbers and the pain of flipping are not for everyone. HGTV is full of crap. It is. It's not the real world, especially if you live in Fargo, North Dakota, and there aren't these amazing, beautiful properties in which to flip. It's just not there. But let's talk about the one that I actually hit on. And I've hit on a number of them. I looked like a genius last year, Kyle, because I stopped hiring outside workers, and we hired and built our own Hatch handyman team. I have a team of 2 that works on these properties. I trust their work. They're steady, but they're just not that fast. And so the projects that I wanted them to get to, I expected them to do that house this month and that house the next month, and it'd be great. I held properties for 6 to 12 months longer than I wanted to, but the market appreciated. And so I look like a flipping genius, literal and figurative flipping genius. I look like a genius in this, when realistically the market made me look smart. And you have to be really careful as a home flipper. Do you know your numbers, or is the market making you smart? Because I knew my numbers if the homes flipped and sold when they were supposed to, but they held for 6 or 12 extra months. And that could have royally screwed me. And it didn't, because the market made me look smarter than I actually am. But the one that I won on, Kyle, that I want to share with, I bought my in-laws house. How weird is that? My in-laws had this old house, and I was scared to death of buying it because I did not do my 70 cents on the dollar. This house had a lot of stuff in it, and it was an old historic 1940s, kind of a mid-century modern house. I just posted it on my social media a couple of days ago, and it was a house in which had great bones, beautiful aesthetic, but I put in $25,000 into lipstick. I put 25 grand into paint and flooring and lighting. That's not a usual great way to do. But I ended up getting, I hyped it up on social media, which eventually brought the buyer. I got 4 offers. This was like 3 years ago, before multiple offers were really a thing. I got 4 offers on the place, and I got it sold on the first day of market, which was brand new in that kind of season. That's normal today, but that was brand new in that kind of season. And so I made like 40 grand on my in-laws house, which made for a very awkward Christmas dinner. But nonetheless, Nonetheless, they understood the risk that I was taking, and that easily could have gone the wrong way. We took this historic, beautiful house, like we painted the brick black, which could have not gone the right way, and then it's forever a black bricked home. But now, yeah, it's my hero story, and I've had a few others, but that one certainly sticks out to me because it was so close to home.
Man, thanks so much for opening up the storybook on some of these real life examples that you've gone through. Man, the one, the North Moorhead property, that I was trying to take some notes on all of the things that can go wrong categorically almost. I mean, for that one, you paid too much for it. Okay. Yeah. So we hear about that being a number one thing to know what to pay. You can lose day one if you do that wrong, right? Yeah. But maybe you didn't know that yet. Your renovations went from 50 to 120 because issues happened. You mentioned cost of labor as something that is not the same today as it was a year ago or 2 years ago. Definitely not even last year or late last year.
Timing if you find somebody that's going to work for 30 or 40 bucks an hour, you get $30 to $40 an hour work.
Mm-hmm.
And now a great laborer is going to cost you, especially if you don't have your own company, going to cost you $100 an hour.
Yeah. And for so many people,
the time in which it takes to get those projects done is far greater. They may bid you on the project, but like I didn't even say this on that North Moorhead house. The electrical got bid out at $2,000 and it ended up being a $7,000 bill because they opened up and they're like, this was all a do-it-yourself project beforehand. And we can't stick to our original bid because we have codes we have to adhere to. And we can walk away and just do what we said we were going to do. But now I was in another $5,000 just for electrical.
Yeah. And when this stuff takes longer because you're discovering new things or you're waiting because of supply chain issues, which you mentioned, now we're talking about the costs of the financing. When you're into a large dollar amount house, like you said, $254,000, that's a big monthly bill. That's a big monthly payment. That's a big, if you're laying that cash out, don't think that you don't have time value of money eating away at you. Like you just said, that in 2 years of holding a house and having cash locked up, you've lost 15% of, the value of that money. All very good points. I think of, why do people want to get into this flipping game? I think it's very popular. I think it looks good, but I think the draw is fast money, right? Mm-hmm. I think you've broken some of that down, that your focus is consumer focused. You're solving problems as they come to you. You're not necessarily trying to go and make cash fast. And I think it's important mentality wise for people that are getting into this investing business. That can really lead you astray if you're just going for cash fast.
I want to say this. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I used to follow it pretty religiously as a kid. Do you know who Tony Gwynn is?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, Tony Gwynn, San Diego Padre. Tony Gwynn, I think, had one of the highest batting averages of anybody to ever play the game. But he was at the same time in which Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire and all these guys that were juiced up were hitting home runs. And Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire got all the attention because they were home run hitters. Tony Gwynn hit base hits and hit nothing but base hits over and over and over again. If you've seen the movie Moneyball, it was always about your on-base percentage. It's that kind of mentality when it comes to flipping homes that I've subscribed to. I just want to hit base hits. I want to be a Hall of Famer in this by hitting base hits because I don't have the emotional fortitude nor deep enough pockets to just be a home run hitter. And that's what we are seeing in media. TV is meant to glorify and exacerbate these things. And so that's what you're seeing on HGTV are these huge, huge swings. But the reality of the worlds that we live in are that these base hits are going to make you a Hall of Famer.
Man, that is such good advice. And I hope that's heard. I hope that's a nugget people are writing down. And when people are looking at this, like I said, people listening right now that maybe have a deal identified or they're analyzing one, what are the things that stick out to you? Because I didn't hear you talk a lot about, if the house has a big backyard, or, it wasn't a lot about the house. It was kind of more overall is kind of how you've pictured some of these. And then, obviously attacking it from a number standpoint, but for people that are analyzing deals, what do they need to know? What do they need to run?
I think a wholesaler or somebody who is a house flipper, they're looking at the actual house, the address, the location, the demographic. For me, I look at the seller. And for me, that's who I serve, right? And I have a fiduciary responsibility to do what is fundamentally best for the seller. I will educate them on the different choices that they have, but ultimately, whether they list with me or they sell to me, I just want what's best for them. And I mean that with full sincerity. And so for me, I'm looking for people that need help, that need a quick solution, and that are like, we've told people, hey, you shouldn't consider selling to us. Please go to market. This is your best option. We've guided people in that sort of sense. Now, if I were to create a true demographic of the seller that's going to say yes, is somebody who has a lot of equity in the house. They've probably lived there for 20 plus years. This is probably going to be a boomer, somebody who's older in age. Oftentimes it's somebody who doesn't have a spouse. And so they've either been single from never being married or divorced or widowed. And so they're dealing with undue amounts of stress. That's our traditional seller. However, we have sold to, I've bought the home of a 30-year-old that relocated and everywhere in between. So I can paint whatever picture. The houses, I see newer houses. The one I bought that was the newest, I think was a 2014 house. The oldest I bought is a 130-year-old house. So it's a whole spectrum. If you were to develop, and I want to go to your original question, Kyle, and that is, what is the game plan for this? Or what are the things that you need to look for? Is I think that you need to try to find a house that needs a little bit of TLC. Avoid the home run, really. Open Door and Zillow Offers and all of these iBuyers that are out there, they're avoiding the home run. They're going with predictable base hits. And so find something that needs lipstick on a pig, that you can wholesale or that you can wholesale. Avoid the giant money pits because it will be just that. There are too many uncertainties that will shut you down as fast as you open up.
Yeah, I think of the investor with the hammer in their hand. They got the pickup truck loaded down with tools. They go into a walkthrough on a potential and they see the place needs everything. And it's almost like, oh, this is a good flip because it needs everything. When in fact, for someone to accurately quantify what that place needs on a walkthrough or before they're opening up walls, I mean, I'd like to know that person. But you're saying that could be a home run for someone, but that also could lead you to the stress you've talked about in some of your stories here, whereas you're saying, hey, let's have, and you've used this analogy, Erik, let's have a pasture with several cows instead of one cow that we get all our milk from. I think I butchered that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not. Sounds tasty either way.
Yes, yes. And I want to touch on this part. And Erik, I'd love to hear your comment on a big picture, because with Passive 25K group and the Passive 25K podcast, we have a lot of people that are pursuing passive income in order for lifestyle, in order for longevity, legacy. They want assets where time is on their side, that are creating money while you sleep in perpetuity. And when we're talking about flipping, it's contradictory to that. It's transactional. It's cash heavy up front. It's a business. It's addicting. It can be something that's very active. And I remember when I came to a mentor at the time, and this was a while back, and I said, I want to get into some house flipping. I said, I laid down my business plan. I said, I want to do 8 flips this year. We're going to do this much margin on each one. And this is how much money it's going to create for us. And then he said, well, once you get that money created, what's it for? And I said, so we can invest in long-term assets that produce cash flow. So we can buy properties in 4plexes and 10plexes that can rent and give you cash flow forever. He's like, well, why don't you just do that right away instead of all this? And I realized I don't care about flipping. I want to get into the long-term game. I want to get into the bigger thing. And I mean, have you seen that in your business, Erik? That you're solving problems for consumers, but with the money that you're making from these, are you pouring these into longer-term assets? Is this just a function for a bigger game for you?
You and I have had this conversation, certainly not on this podcast, but of strategy. And I love the fact that you're bringing this up, because if somebody jumps into flipping, I think it's putting the cart in front of the horse. The reason why I flip now, and I used to buy 5 to 15 properties a year. Again, my portfolio is about 60, but I have some pretty large assets in that. And I started investing in 2012, 10 years ago now, the year in which I started building my real estate team. And I took every bit of passive income or every bit of extra income I had, and I used it to buy houses. And so as I developed that portfolio, I now said, I have something that for me is predictable and consistent and stable. Now I'm going to start gambling. And I think of flipping like I think of gambling. I'm going to start flipping. And my first move was I flipped 1, and then it turned into 2. And now it's probably 15 to 25 a year is what I'm doing. And I have a person who I know is going to be a guest on your show in a couple of weeks. Her name's Sarah Lincoln. I haven't seen any of these. I give 0 hours a day to this. But I'm making 15 to 20 grand a property right now. And that's a pretty fun gig to consistently do, but it's gambling. And my goal right now is to say, with that house that I invested in, I need that to be my stable income. That's going to put my kids through college. That's going to support my family for forever. And now I can risk. And if I hit my numbers, I can turn a house in 4 months. And if I profit 10% and I take that same money and I do 3 houses in a year now with that money, I can get a 30% return on my investment. Now, that'll stop somebody in their tracks. That's like Bitcoin money. If you can get 30% return on your investment in the course of a year. But I'm only doing that because I first have invested. And Kyle, I think I'm carrying 9 million in real estate. Like I got a lot of doors and a lot of risk that's out there. And so I'm now taking this, and my job and my goal is to actually become the bank. And in order to become the bank, I have to start on my own stuff before I start it with other people, because that's realistically that next level money. That's that Gary Boomershine money that we've talked about is we will make our biggest financial impact on passivity. We'll make our biggest financial impact when we can actually be the financer for. And so that's starting for me with flips, but it's going to turn into larger things than that over time.
And I love that. I needed to hear your long-term mentality, and I wanted the audience to hear that, because this isn't a game that's just localized for flipping. This is built on a stable foundation where now you're going to take on more risk. I've told many investor clients that come to me and they say, I want to invest. Let's go get a 5-plex. And I say, well, how do you feel about getting a couple stable single-family homes that appreciate with a growing market in Fargo? And once we have those babies humming for you, and it's not sexy, $300, $400 a month cash flow, that's not life-changing, but you got a couple of those. Now let's go roll the dice a little bit on something. Now let's do a little, building that diversification. And again, people are putting some people might put the cart in front of the horse, as you say, with just getting into the flipping because I'm new in real estate, or I'm young and I don't have assets yet, or I don't have money yet. So how do I get money? I'm going to start flipping. And it's funny how it's the other way around. Okay. Anything to add there, Erik?
No, you and I certainly see the world through the same lens, because I think single families are the more steady, predictable base hits. And then things like 4-plexes, 10-plexes, those are high risk, high reward. And then the piece that isn't told I know we're not talking about rentals today, but the piece that isn't told is the quality of tenants that you're getting in a 4-plex versus the quality of tenants you're getting in a single family, which has proved to be a lot of learned lessons for me.
And Erik, do you, just real quick, do you keep some of these too as rentals? And have you've sold some of them back, obviously, but are there some where you do some light renovation and keep them?
I have that option. In the last couple of years, I haven't. There's a house right now that we're doing that I'm keeping, but I'm going to Airbnb and VRBO it out, because for me, I can get instead of getting a $300 or $400 profit a month, I can get $1,000 profit a month with this. And I know you're experiencing that right now too with your Airbnb.
Yeah. That's really cool
But again,
to
that's
hear
more
the
cash in
options.
because you furnish the whole house, and there's a few months where you're losing money before you start making money.
But then you're getting into buying at a good equity position at the beginning, so you can do the Burr model of refinancing some money back out. Whole different topic matter, which we could keep going on. But Erik, this has been super valuable, packed with a ton of stuff. I'm excited to listen through this, just with the statistics you shared, the actual stories. We just thank you for your transparency and your exposure and experience in this. With people listening, where can they find you, man? How can they continue to see what you're up to and follow you?
The greatest is to follow Hatch Coaching. That's hatchcoaching.com. We're releasing a book called The Perfect Real Estate Agent Blueprint in June 2022. So we're excited about that. That'll be all over our website. And then we also put out a video or two a week on our YouTube channel. So that's just follow Hatch Coaching over on the old YouTubes, and you'll get lots of great content. Whether you're an investor or somebody who is building a real estate business, we got you covered.
There you have it, folks. That's Erik Hatch. This has been episode 6, Flipping a House in Fargo, North Dakota. I think you got a lot of details on that. Erik, again, you have served as someone I constantly look to. I'm always sending you messages and videos, asking questions. You're always there for me. You're a mentor to so many. You're a leader in the industry. You're paving new paths in what you're doing, man. I just want to encourage you and tell you to keep going and keep running fast, because you got a lot of people that want to follow and get on your train. I love you like a brother, man, and thanks for being on today.
Thanks, Kyle. This is hella fun.
This has been the Passive 25K podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Also, tell us what you thought by leaving a comment below on today's topic. If something really hit with you, don't be afraid to share this with someone else that's interested in passive income. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Passive 25K podcast.